Greetings. I am the man known as Red Finian Punk. Now, in the last couple of days, this country has been, God, in mourning for some, senior member of the British monarchy that just died. He was 99 years of age, few months short of his centenary, his 100th birthday. Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh. Now, so many people have been crying about this and saying what a great guy he was. And I think I wish to point out how wrong and incorrect this is. I accidentally offended a friend of mine by getting pissed off with it all, and she thought I was being mean. So thankfully we have reconciled, and she realised that there was reasons for my dislike and disdain for this bastard. Now, let's talk about the death of this guy. Let's also talk about the reason people have been so upset about this guy dying, and all this outpouring of grief, much like the mawkish outpouring of grief and mass hysteria that happened when Princess Diana died in 1997. I could never fucking understand that even then. What we have is this. The reason this happens is this. It's mass manipulation by that veritable anal cavity, the anal cavity that is known as the British press, which spews. And it spews, and it fucking spews the most mawkish, foul-smelling, sycophantic diarrhea about a bunch of inbred parasites who leech off not only the working class of this country. I live in the United Kingdom, by the way. It also lives off the spoils and the plunder and the absolute obliteration of cultures across the world with the British Empire and its continuation now under the British Commonwealth. Now, I don't wish to be offensive to people, but trust me, I am not a callous-hearted person. I'm not cruel for the sake of it. I am cruel, as to quote Shakespeare, I am cruel only to be kind. Right, let's talk about context here and cop-outs. Okay, admittedly, Prince Philip was a product of his class privilege. He was a product of his time. He was born in 1921. That's true. I'll grant you that. Okay. However, just a few years later, men like Fidel Castro and Che Guevara were born. They also said politically incorrect things because of the time they were in, and they didn't know any better. But unlike Prince fucking Philip, Che Guevara, when he had made some homophobic comments, or when he made racist comments, which he did and he admitted to, he actually did admit to it. He went back on it and said, I was wrong in doing so. He also dedicated his entire bloody life to fighting the good fight and supporting black and other non-white people and poor people in the global south, fighting for their own liberation against colonialism, imperialism and racism. That in itself should say something about the guy. The man even gave his own life. He was murdered by the CIA in the 1960s. He never even made it to his 40th birthday. Fidel Castro carried on living on and led Cuba, led it out of poverty. He was the first head of state to declare that homosexuality was not a mental illness or something to that effect. Prince Philip never did any of that. He openly vilified poor people. He made countless smart-arse wisecracks denigrating and demeaning people of colour and poor people. I mean, I can quote a few things for you now. In fact, shall I do so? Let's have a look. I've got some. I did a Google search on quotes. I suggest you do the same. Just quote ugly quotes. Just search for ugly quotes of Prince Philip. You'll have a field day. Right. To put this into context, 1981, I was about 9 or 10 years of age at the time. Yes, I'm older than I look. Pretty well preserved, eh? Anyway, we had the Thatcher regime. I was growing up in the Irish community. I'm a second generation Irish person growing up in England, in the English Midlands at the time, 1980s, when the Thatcher junta, as we often call it, devastated the poor working class communities. They destroyed the miners in 1984, but in 1981 we had one of the worst recessions to date. It's been surpassed since then, but at the time it was crippling. Unemployment was rocketing. It was about 3 to 4 million people unemployed. The public sector was being slashed, so people had nothing to do, nowhere to go. The healthcare was being cut as well, and they were all in a right fucking horrendous state. Now, bearing in mind, this guy wouldn't know poverty if it kicked him in the bollocks. Well, his attitude, I remember it on TV. He even said, I remember the scornful tone of voice. He said at the time, everyone is complaining we want more to have. Everyone is complaining we must have more leisure. Now they are complaining they are unemployed. What a lovely guy, hey? What a lovely fucking bloke. I mean, he really feels the pain of the poor, doesn't he? Now, moving forward a few years to 1986, this is one of his most infamous quotes and infamous wisecracks. He was talking to a couple of British students who were staying in China, and he said to them, and I quote, this is a particularly nasty one, "If you stay here much longer, you'll all be slitty-eyed." I really hate using that expression, but this goes to show the fucking mentality of the bloke. Okay, he was an old guy, member of the ruling class of his time, but he should have been fucking told at least to rein it in and not behave like a fucking reactionary old bigot. Fuck's sake, this is 1986, not 1896. Don't be a fucking dick. Moving forward, 1995. Now, this is a special shout out to loyalists who were crowing when they won the no vote in the Scottish independence referendum. They were going down the streets chanting, "You can stick your independence up your arse." Now, do you want to know what this royal family you're so loyal to? Do you want to know what they think of you? On a visit to Scotland in 1995, he's speaking to a local driving instructor in some small town called Oban, I think it's called. Now, this guy is a driving instructor, teaches people how to drive, get them through their driving test. His remark to this guy was, "How do you keep the natives off the booze long enough to get them through their test?" Oh, aye, he really loves the Scots, doesn't he? There's plenty of drinking going on in Scotland, but have you seen how people binge drink in England? Jesus fucking Christ, mate. Anyway, let's move on. Same year, 1995. Now, this time, counselling was becoming more popular and more common amongst like war veterans and other people who suffered with things like post-traumatic stress disorder. You know, that's the war veterans in the British Army. You know, those working class people who you kind of, you send out there to go and get themselves killed to preserve your class privilege, eh, Phil? Yeah, them. You'd know all about that, wouldn't you? Well, he says this is talk about gaslighting. He said, referring to the good old days of Victorian Britain and Edwardian Britain and all that sort of thing, he said, "We didn't have counsellors every time someone let off a gun. You just got on with it." Stiff upper lip, eh? Like he'd really know what it's like to be poor. He'd really know what it's like to be stuck in a war zone. What a cunt. Anyway, now moving forward again to 1998. Talking to a student who'd been trekking in Papua New Guinea. Talk about reinforcing ugly stereotypes. This is a nasty one too. He said to this student, who had been through this trekking expedition to Papua New Guinea, he said to them, "You managed to not get eaten then?" This is what he thinks of people out in the Pacific, and this is what he thinks of people in Asia, and this is what he thinks of poor people. Can I not emphasise how much of a bastard this guy was? Now, one thing I will say for him, one thing I will say for Prince fucking Philip was at least you knew what you were getting, I suppose, to some extent at least. At least he had some modicum of honesty. At least he kind of, he didn't pretend to be politically correct, which is more than I can say for the bourgeois liberals of the Labour Party, the Liberal Democrats and the Tory Party. If you're in the USA, that's the Democrats and the Republicans and so on. If you're in mainland Europe, that's the Social Democrats and the Christian Democrats. And if you're in Ireland, that's Fianna Fáil and Fine fucking Gael. At least he didn't bullshit. I'll give him that. I will give him that one thing. However, I will not credit the rest of those bastards with the honesty for now, because they're all gushing over him, kissing his dead arse, making him out to be this great gentleman and a paragon of society, and what an example to have for the British people. And then we get the British press practically deifying him, talking of dishonesty. You want to see the British press for fucking dishonesty? They are the worst. They're even worse than the US press, and they're bad enough. Now, what did they say? Let's see now. Another relatively honest guy who I'm not a fan of. I am not a Labour Party supporter. I can't stand them. I saw the way they treated the militant tendency in the 1980s, and they're not even left-wing enough for me. I saw the way they denounced Bobby Sands in 1981. Yes, I remember that too. The Labour Party denounced that. They sold out the they sold out the miners in 1985, betrayed them. The Labour Party is a fucking rotten pro-monarchist, pro-imperialist party. They are also gushing over fucking Prince Philip. But they were led by a guy called Jeremy Corbyn a few years ago, who those of us on the far militant left, the tanky Stalinists, as they like to call us, we were saying, if he's really as good as they say he is, he's never going to change the Labour Party. He's got no chance. But he tried, and I will at least give him the benefit of the doubt that perhaps Jeremy Corbyn meant well, and he was relatively honest. Now, the British press slandered him. They said he was going to turn this into like some kind of, was it Banana Republic or some fucking thing like that. They were demonising the guy as a lunatic, going to kill the country, raving loony left and all this kind of shite. And they also accused him, this is when it gets nasty, anti-Semitism. Shall I find some quotes of anti-Semitism from Jeremy Corbyn now? Can I? Oh no, I can't. Why can't I find them? Because there were never any. He didn't. All that guy did was he stood up and he called out the racist apartheid state of Israel, which is deliberately manipulating the whole memory of the Holocaust and all that sort of stuff to carry out acts of genocide against Palestinians. It's crushing homes. It is murdering children. It is dropping white phosphorus onto them. And all of this is going on. This is, but if you criticise that, you're automatically an anti-Semite. Now, these bastards that call you an anti-Semite for that are the same people that literally cheered on actual, literal, neo-Nazi anti-Semites while they were storming the parliament buildings in Ukraine. Bit different from even more extreme than what they were doing on the 6th of January 2021 in Capitol Hill, eh? They were burning people alive in Odessa. They were defacing and destroying synagogues. They were murdering Jews. They were murdering Roma people, and they were killing ethnic Poles and ethnic Russians. And their disdain for poor people is legendary. They're also cheering on right-wing, far-right government of Viktor Orban in Hungary, and the far-right PIS party in Poland, who were killing and disappearing gay people and calling for white supremacy. And their supporters and allies are doing this. This is all fine, but if any of us like Jeremy Corbyn calls out the state of Israel, it's anti-Semitism. Meanwhile, a racist bastard like Prince Philip gets a fucking state funeral, which the British taxpayer is paying for, and we're all supposed to just kiss his arse. Sorry, mate. Call me a callous bastard. Anyone who knows me will know I'm anything but that. But there's no fucking way I'm going to stand there and pay tribute to people like that. Fuck that. Now, I'm going to leave this on a nicer note than that. I'm going to say that be kind, because kindness is beautiful. Capitalism and monarchism are fucking ugly. They're out of date. They're rotten. They're causing the deaths of millions. Capitalism is destructive. Now, but if you believe in any deity, I don't. I'm an atheist. I'm a lapsed Catholic. God help me, boy. Oh. I'm a lapsed Catholic. I don't believe in God. But anyway, that's not the point. But if you do, for the love of that deity you worship, let's just destroy capitalism, shall we? Before it destroys us. It will kill us all if we don't. Now, with that, I'm going to end this here. I'm going to say, take care of yourselves. Be nice. Love one another and all the rest of it. My name is Red Fenian Punk. At least that is on here. If you like this video, please click like. Please click subscribe. And there's a wee bell if you want to click on that. Because I'm starting to upload more videos now. So stick around. In the meantime, you take care of yourselves. I will say slán go fóill, agus go nádíonn bóthar libh go léir. Saoirse go Joe. I'm Red Fenian Punk.